Yes, it is time for our Middle East report, and as always, we have James Dorsey joining us. He's Senior Fellow at Singapore's S. Rajaratnam School of International Studies and the Middle East Institute, talking to us live from Singapore. James, good morning and welcome to Radio Islam once again.
Good morning. Pleasure to be with you.
Oh, thank you so much. So, Turkey and Israel are eyeing an extended cooperation in Central Asia. Tell us a little bit more.
Indeed. Well, you've got a softening of relations between Turkey and Israel. You had this week two Turkish officials visit Israel in advance of an expected visit to Turkey, the first in a decade, by the Israeli President Isaac Herzog. And parallel to that, you had a lunch or dinner that was organized by a very prominent American Jewish figure involving the ambassadors of Turkey, of Kazakhstan, of Uzbekistan, and organized by the ambassador of Azerbaijan. And the subject of that dinner, and presumably a subject that will come up in the Israeli president's visit, is cooperation of Turkey and Israel, particularly in the security field in Central Asia. With other words, Turkey and Israel see some opportunities to jointly exploit tensions that exist in the Turkic world, with other words, the former Turkic republics of the Soviet Union, as the Ukraine crisis unfolds.
Yeah. All right, and talking about Israel again, Israel's lobbying U.S. President Joe Biden on behalf of the UAE to designate the Yemeni Houthis as a terror group. Now, this is a call that's been going on for some time now.
Indeed. Well, the Biden administration had lifted the designation of the Yemeni Houthis as a terrorist group, a designation that was imposed by the Trump administration. A lot of the human rights groups and obviously pro-Houthi groups and supporters had lobbied for the lifting of the designation because it made the humanitarian crisis far more aggravated it in Yemen, because humanitarian groups had difficulty dealing with the Houthis and supplying them with relief goods. Now that the Houthis have been firing missiles against the United Arab Emirates, and you've even had some missile attacks by pro-Iranian groups out of Iraq, there is a push to redesignate the Houthis as terrorists, and the Israelis have stepped in here with the power of the Israeli lobby in Washington to support the UAE effort to get that designation reimposed.
Are we seeing how the networking's working, aren't we?
Absolutely.
So Saudi Arabia transfers Aramco shares worth $80 billion to state fund. What's that about? So
you've basically got, of course, a very high oil price that's nearing about $100 a barrel. That's a good time to be, if you want to do even a limited initial public offering, that's a good time to do it. The $80 billion that were transferred in terms of shares from Aramco to the Public Investment Fund, the Saudi Sovereign Wealth Fund, are approximately 4% of Aramco, the national oil company. Think back a couple of years when Saudi Arabia wanted to sell up to 5% of Aramco. In the end, only ended up selling about 2%, and only on the local Saudi stock exchange, for a number of reasons, including regulatory concerns that the Saudis had in New York and in London, as well as doubts among investors in terms of what Aramco's reserves were. So this time round, they're hoping that with such a high oil price, they'll be able to secure a greater amount. And they are this time round looking at not doing this exclusively, if at all, on the Saudi stock exchange, but on one of the world's major stock exchanges.
All right, from the high oil price, which is really affecting us here in South Africa as our petrol price goes up, we move on to Turkish gold conversion plan. Likely to falter on lack of public trust?
So Turkey is one of the countries with the highest amount of gold that is privately held. And gold has always been a sort of insurance against the arbitrariness of the state. If you go back to the Ottoman period, the way Ottoman taxes were collected was that the tax collector would come to your home and whatever was there was taxable. So if you had given me a bar of gold, then that was taxable because it was in my house. It wasn't in your house. So Turks would hide gold. They would hide jewelry. They would bury it in the garden, put it under the mattress, whatever they do. And that's what they do today. As a result of that, there are an approximate 3,000 to 5,000 tons of gold hidden in private hands in Turkey. That's worth about $200 to $300 billion. And so the Turkish government figures if they can get only 10% of that gold converted into currency, then they can significantly increase their central bank reserves. Now the problem is you've got a government that lacks public trust, whose economic policies are responsible for the inflation and the price and the economic crisis in Turkey is in. So it's highly unlikely that Turks want to give up their gold because they trust the government, which has put them already in dire straits.
Well, that's quite a bit of gold. I'm not sure whether South Africa is still able to mine that much after so many years of our mines going through what they have. But the thought of having that much of gold lying around somewhere, as you said, we don't know where they've hidden it. But right. I can imagine people come up with some very innovative ways. But for our listeners out there, if you would like to check out more of James Dorsey's articles, you can subscribe to his newsletter and his blog called The Turbulent World of Middle East Soccer, and you can find it on www.jamesmdorsey.net. That's www.jamesmdorsey.net, and you'll be able to pick up all of these stories. James, thank you so much for being with us this morning. And as we were saying, lots of gold, and the petrol price keeps going up. So I wish that some of that Midas touch would come to other countries as well.
I hope it for you.
Thank you.
But with or without, enjoy the weekend.
You as well. Thank you, James. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.